Hopefully everybody at home is following along. I want to welcome you all to our G.I.Joe Debriefed Ep.2, where each night of the week, each night of this week at least, we're going to be watching a different part of the first miniseries, the M.A.S.S device, from the old Sunbow G.I.Joe cartoon. So we have a few people here tonight. We're going to try and keep the guests coming. So tonight we have myself, Robert Atkins, we have Tom Feister, and we have Carson, our fobbit, in charge, basically keeping everything together for us. So real quick, let's go ahead and do just a brief introduction. Carson, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Cool, man. So I started collecting G.I. Joe. I started watching the cartoon in '85 and basically browbeat my mom for close to a year until she bought me my first figure. Her and my brother actually bought me my first figure. They came and picked me up in my friend's house, and it was dial tone. So I was like simultaneously like so happy because I had my first G.I. Joe, and also completely just like destroyed, devastated. Like you couldn't give me Beachhead or Bats or any of the better characters of 1986. But anyway, so I've been a collector and fan ever since. Run a site called 3djoes.com since 2012, and have done some books and posters, and just, you know, a lifelong passion for G.I. Joe and doing what I can to try to help keep it vibrant. And there's an amazing community that's very supportive of everything I've done. So
for sure. Yeah, very good. And out of the three of us, you definitely look the most like Dial Tone tonight. So I think that's quite important.
Right. I'm ready.
Feister, yeah. So go ahead and tell us about yourself and maybe your first G.I. Joe too. That's cool.
Sure. Well, it's my first G.I. Joe was almost the entire original line. Right. I came down Christmas morning, and my mom had damn near everything. So
I walked into that one.
Yeah, I mean, I had no choice in the matter. My mom just set the hook, and yeah, I went for it for years. So following that, I was G.I. Joe cover artist on G.I. Joe Origins. I did a couple covers on the regular G.I. Joe book for about 3 years. Prior to that, I'd worked on a book called Ex Machina. I've worked for Marvel and DC and just about every other comics publisher around. And I've also bounced around animation a bit here and there. I was lead character designer on a show called The Awesomes for season 1. And I'm currently a character designer on a new show that I'm not allowed to talk about. But today, they released some of the season 4 promo art for Rick and Morty. So I had a hand in some of the promo art that's floating around right now. And beyond that, I'm ready to watch some G.I. Joe, Robert.
I know, me too. Just real quick. So my name is Robert Atkins. I've worked on G.I. Joe a big part of my career. I actually started, well, the very first thing I worked on was written by Brandon Jerwa, our other guest tonight, or host, I should say. He knew we were about to talk about him, so he's like, bang, I'm going to get in on this. So yeah, so I've been doing freelance comics for the past 14, 15 years, I guess. And yeah, worked on G.I. Joe, a lot of stuff for Marvel and a number of other companies. Did a lot of toy package art and some production design for that as well. So I think my first G.I. Joe, it's tough for me to remember because I had so many that were kind of passed down. I grew up with 5 other brothers. So we had, all of us kind of had this community box of toys. To be honest, I can't remember what the very first one I got was. I know one of my favorites growing up was Zartan because of the color changing.
Oh yeah.
Just because he was such a cool looking figure. But I remember that one I didn't let my other brothers play with because they started blowing him up with like M80s and stuff. I'm like, no. So I like hid that one away. And then, yeah, so I don't think that was my first one for sure. So Carson, you would know. What year did Zartan come out?
So I muted my microphone in case my chugging was bubbling in the mic. Anyway, Zartan was so fantastic because of that commercial. That's the power of advertising. When they yeah, showed, sure. You know, when he hits the sunlight, his skin's hurting. You know? And there's an amazing story behind it. The guys that brought the plastics to Hasbro that did the color change, they initially wanted to do a vehicle, not a figure. And the reason it ended up being a figure was because that plastic was so darn expensive for the material. So they had to come up with a story that explained it. So I love that kind of toy stuff. But Zartan came out in 1984, first release.
I have to say, like,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I have to say, anyone who's been watching Burger King that doesn't see elements of the knock, I don't know what I can tell you, but like I'm watching Tiger King, and it's just all I see are dreadnoughts. Is it just me?
Oh yeah.
Really?
The kind of meth heads, the meth head rednecks, teeth falling out. Yeah, boisterous.
So it's
playing with guns all the time.
So it's not just me.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
The Dreadnoks definitely had some trailer trash aspect to them. It was more like swamp trash than trailer trash.
It was like back then in the 80s, if you were like a rough and tough biker gang, you were wearing like see-through mesh shirts and midriffs. I was like, well, I don't know when that was tough.
With some gold bling on your brass knuckles and maybe a skull necklace, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we've been kind of going around just doing a quick introduction. Brandon, you want to tell us a bit about yourself and professional work, and then, of course, your very first G.I. Joe that you got.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that last night a little bit. That was Flash. I got him in Manhattan, Kansas, as we know. Also, we're finding out piece by piece behind the scenes that Carson is weirdly tied to all of our lives.
It's true.
And that'll be a whole Secret Origins episode later. He and Tom now have a secret connection. Robert, I'm so sorry you've been left out of the equation.
No, it's the Indianapolis retaliation.
Flash,
Go ahead.
That's right. I'm a writer. I did Snake Eyes Declassified with Robert, and I've never worked with Tom, and that's fine. But I would love to work with Carson someday.
Hey, I have to wait.
No, Tom and I have been friends for a long time, and I've always wanted to work with him.
I'm going to stop Brandon right there. I want you to know that I went on Comixology last night to download the book you and Robert did, and it was not available. So I tried. I was going to dig into that series, and I couldn't get it.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I understand. That it is tough to get such an in-demand book 14 years after it was released, Tom. So I understand your pain there. If only you'd had an earlier opportunity.
Listen, I apologize. I throw myself on the mercy of your of your goodwill and kindness.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
No, I have no mercy. By the way, I wanted to let everybody know that after my martini opulence last night, which I received several messages about, Carson tried to do the right thing, and he brought a beer. He showed me before the show. He's like, "Hey, I brought a beer. We're drinking together. I'm on iced tea tonight, guys. Sorry."
Sold me down the river. Now I'm the one drinker of the bunch.
So Carson's a bad influence.
Just for the Facebook folks, just real quick for the Facebook folks, I am watching it live today, and I will be trying to respond to your comments and also get your questions in for these creators. So you've read their books, you've admired their art, you've read Brandon's brilliant writing. If you have questions, hit me up with them. I had people that commented on it after last night's videos, saying how they were big fans of you guys. And I'm like, well, hit them up with questions. So we'll try to work more of that in. We'll pause in between each commercial break and get some of that back and forth going. Sorry, back to Tom.
Yeah.
What?
Back to Tom.
No, that's right. Hey, Brandon, did you want to do a recap of the kind of the last episode, or would you like me to? It doesn't matter.
Are you prepared to?
Yeah, I can.
Knock yourself out, man. We can all take turns recapping, and if you're ready, then by all means.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we have our mini-series opens up with this really great quick action scene just to jump right into who the G.I. Joes are and kind of what makes them unique. They have an Air Force base that gets attacked. We kind of see the brilliance of the Sky Strikers as they're getting blown up kind of one by one. Major Blood is there with a Cobra attack force and jets that were never created into toys that we were sad about. So after, I think was it Duke who hops in, Duke and Scarlet who hop into like the lone Sky Striker to fly up and take a few out. They land and they're kind of wondering, who, do they know it was Cobra? Do they know it was Cobra at that point? Yeah. Okay. So, then it cuts to like a mysterious temple, right? And we have Destro who approaches kind of in incognito at first, but then we get that sweet reveal of Destro and his deeply cut V-neck shirt. And as he, as he kind of enters the Cobra Fortress is where we get first introduced to the elements, which the three main elements that'll be used to fuel the M.A.S.S device, those kind of radioactive crystals if you remember those pink crystals, you had the heavy water, the blue water, and what was the yellow? What's the yellow? I think it was some metal or something.
You retained this episode so much better than I
No.
did, for the record.
Well, so they get to so at any rate, so that kind of introduces the concept of the metals and things like that. And then there was like a homing device, right, that was placed, or that they're going to try and put a homing device in the Joe base, right? So then it cut to the military installation, and this is when we had the Joes infiltrate the base, right? Snake Eyes does it all incognito. He like rolls around style, sneaks in. Scarlet comes flying in on a jetpack, like in front of everybody sees her. You can't do that silently. Lands on top of the roof and meets up with Snake Eyes. And then Stalker is like, in your face. And he like goes ramping up with the ram and just blows the crap out of everything and lands on top of the building with them. They're like, well, let's go on in. And they just like, they just walk right in like that. And I'm like, what was that? Anyway, so they infiltrate the base just to show how easy it was, how awesome they are, maybe a little bit of both. And then we get introduced to a general, we get introduced to General Flag, right? That's General Flag.
Yeah.
And what was the lady's name? The officer?
The one that was Baroness?
I'm sorry, I've got this. Yeah, her name is Juanita Hooper.
Stop.
You're
Is
awesome.
it really?
Yeah, it's Juanita Hooper.
Juanita?
Wow.
I
Yeah,
remember
and it
like
wasn't. I don't think that was General Flag. I think that was General not Flag.
So as
Okay.
we stated, our disclaimer before we started this series, you're not going to learn a lot from us.
You're not going to learn hardly anything.
We're just here to reminisce and rewatch this for the first time in quite a few years.
This is just a bunch of 40-year-olds doing their best to keep it together. So so anyway, so they get introduced to old Juanita and General Not Flag, and they kind of take them to see the satellite, right? So then we find out that Juanita was actually Baroness, and she had the homing device, and they're with the M.A.S.S device, they're able to transport a few his tanks and a whole kind of group of soldiers, Cobra troopers, into the military installation, right? So they kind of show up, which is just like brand new technology. It's kind of like blowing the G.I. Joes away. So then there's a firefight between like Snake Eyes and Duke, Scarlet. I think Stalker's still there with them. And then Major Blood, his troopers, Baroness joins them after she takes off her disguise. And there's kind of like a fisticuffs. Well, in the scrum, they are able to grab Duke, right? This is Duke's first capture, first of many. So they grab old Duke.
You always remember your first capture, don't you?
I know. His incidental infiltration. Good old Duke. So then they take him to, they take him to Cobra. And, oh man, so then he is, let me think. I was on such a good roll. Then they, that's okay. So then he shows up in these like crazy slave pins. They've got, this is where we first see those like headbands,
make them fight.
Right?
Yeah, they make them fight each other.
Yeah, exactly. To mind control them, I guess. Yeah.
It's a gladiator style battle, and he's got to fight.
It takes place in the arena of sport.
Yes.
Nice.
Excellent.
Very good, Brandon. Very good.
Yeah,
was good.
The drop of a hat. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I knew you had some talent.
Thank you for finally seeing it.
Thank you for finally displaying it.
It's amazing just watching this friendship blossom over the last couple nights.
Well, and we went. I'm sorry. I think we probably meant for this intro to go a lot faster than I'm going. They just real quick to wrap up. The Joes find out who invented the M.A.S.S device, and they show up, and then Cobra shows up like at the same time, and they have another big firefight. So this is like the third huge kind of battle scene in 20 minutes. And this is where we see Scarlet and Snake Eyes have a moment behind a bunch of logs, and then that's what I got from it. And then let's see. Okay, then we cut back to, I think we end when Duke is back in the slave arena, and he's going to be pitted up against this kind of Masters of the Universe lookalike, and try to fight this giant of a dude in Speedos.
Who has the same roar as the Hulk from the Incredible Hulk animated series.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
noticed that too.
there are so many reused sound effects throughout G.I. Joe. It's great.
So, oh God, Josh Shearer just commented that the recap is longer than the episode.
Oh yeah, no. In
And,
fact, this is just the show now. It's just Robert explaining the previous episode.
So I think
he can do it on a city bus. He can do it on the internet, wherever you want to do it.
He does his recaps like he does his artwork, very detailed.
Yeah, very detailed and very slowly. That's how it works.
No, you did a great job. I was
that was
unprepared.
awesome.
I would have been like, what had happened was
that was
got
great.
captured, and so.
Yeah.
That was good
Okay,
stuff, Robert.
We're ready to go, right?
All right.
All of Robert's students that are watching, like, oh my God, that's exactly what he does to us too.
That's how I teach my lessons. That's
we've all learned a lesson.
I'm going to.
All right,
kick
so
off episode
tomorrow
2.
night, Brandon's going to do the recap, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's Robert's job from now on.
Wrong. All right, back over here.
Maybe we just have Robert start the recap at 8, and then we start at 8:30.
That's probably not a bad idea.
Next time I'm bringing 2 beers. All right. Now for episode 2, Slaves of the Cobra Master.
Ooh.
Good job, Robert. Good job.
Thanks.
Which I bet starts with a recap. Oh, wait, no.
It probably does.
We'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I.Joe.
You guys let me know how the volume is.
I think this is good.
Anyone else having a hard time not singing along?
Oh my
Always.
God.
Please do. Fighting to save the day.
He never gives up. He's always
Tom?
there.
That is a deep V.
Freedom over land.
It's a
That's
really
not
deep
even a
V.
V. It's going right into his pants. Like, it's not even, there's no buttons or
Yeah,
anything, not
that's
even a
true.
zipper.
It's more like pimp suspenders.
Why did he shoot
never
the
noticed
dynamite? Was the dynamite not going to explode on its own?
Maybe it would have fallen down and just landed on something. He didn't shoot
I
it.
was just noticing, so Gung Ho's in the background lifting weights, but he took his vest off. I don't know how his vest was really impeding his movement for the shoulder press. I don't know. Always.
No, there's a recap.
Okay, so that's the M.A.S.S device, which is Cobra's teleportation weapon.
Yep.
Yeah, that was Flag.
It was Flag, and I consulted
Flag.
I consulted a source. It was General Flag.
Okay.
Also, notice how they killed the Eiffel Tower. They also killed the Eiffel Tower in G.I. Joe, the live-action
That's
film.
right. Yeah.
I don't know
Somebody
what
has
you're
it
talking
for the
about.
Eiffel Tower.
Do you think they were doing that purposefully as an homage, or just because? I don't
It
know.
very well could have been, seriously, when they were writing that film. Oh, let's do the Eiffel Tower.
Wait, hold up. They wrote that film?
Yeah.
Not the same people.
Well-
Oh, you're talking about how bad the writing was. I got you. Wait, so is this a different Cobra base, or are we back to the same one we saw last episode?
It looks like a
Excellent
different
question.
base.
Yeah, this is the arena,
The arena of sport.
but it does look like a different temple for Cobra Base. It does look different.
And the scale looks really off, like how big they are versus the soldiers.
Yeah.
You would be led to believe by this that there's roughly 10 million Cobra troops, and they can all
So-
take a day off for a sporting event.
I know.
So did you guys use like a He-Man figure when you were recreating this when you were playing? Like what did you guys have?
WWF wrestlers.
There you go. That'll work. Did you go Hogan? Did you go King Kong Bundy? Like what are we talking here?
Maybe Ultimate Warrior, I think.
There you,
It probably
Wow.
was. He wasn't around by then. I don't know.
okay, yeah. He
We
was
might have to
that was
stat
much
check
later.
that.
Yeah, no, he was much later. I think I was in junior high or high school when. No, I was in high school when Ultimate Warrior showed up.
I'm just impressed how limber he is. Like, that was quite a kick.
Well, his first kick, he just Duke. Like, how does that not just full on knock him out? Because that was like a side kick to the jaw.
Build another mass device. But as you know,
As you can
mass is
see here, the device is powered by Pop Rocks.
What do you think of Pop Rocks?
To defeat Cobra, we must get our own
Do they still make those?
Cobra's gonna
Yes.
be on the horn with demands in
They
less
do.
than 24 hours, Dr. Vandermeer. Now, how long before you can have a M.A.S.S device ready for us to use against them?
So the Eiffel Tower was just relocated, not destroyed. I got clarification.
Well, then tell us where to find them, Doc, and we'll bring them in pronto. Very well.
It's now in Las
But
Vegas.
it would not be easy. The first element we need is a radio.
One of the interesting things too is how well I gotta say too, a shout out to the voice actors for this show.
Amen. Yep.
Because so many of them were doing multiple voices of like just little side characters, and like I think that that's definitely becoming, I don't want to say like a lost art, but so many cartoons are just kind of grabbing the big name actor, you know what I mean, to come in and voice something instead of really hiring those like, I don't know, just people who've really cultivated voice acting as a career and as an art.
So one thing I've heard that like credit where credit's due, both to the actors but also to the director Wally Burr. Everybody that I've talked to that was a voiceover artist on this show talks about how Wally Burr brought the best performances out of everybody that came in there.
So can we go back for a second? I mean, you don't actually have to rewind it, but so he's walking down that corridor with the robot snakes, and I just, the budget that Cobra had to build this giant temple, I mean, just, I don't know what they spent on just like, concrete pouring alone, but, then you get into the cost of robot snakes, and all of those are custom. You can't go to like Home Depot and pick up robot snakes.
They're not at IKEA. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there's a, well, I don't know, maybe, well, I wonder what Cobra IKEA would look like.
Cobra.
Again, I think it was
spelled with a K.
Right.
I think it was again Larry Houston that did the set, like the background designs for these, and then this made it into the comic book later for the silent issue number 21.
I've seen some people do some custom versions of toys of this.
Yep.
And God, I would still want one of those today.
Amen.
What a missed opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I never had a Terradrome, but I would have much rather had this thing.
The Terradrome was incredible. To me, the best playset, better than the Flag. I mean, there's so much functionality to it. So if you don't have one yet, Tom, you should pick yourself up a Terradrome.
I'm already running out of room.
All right. So don't these become animated?
That's
they
a lot
stand
of
up
story
straight.
There they
too.
go. There they go.
There you go.
Security system.
Shaking it.
It wasn't a very intimidating
Are we
wiggle,
fast
was
forwarding
it?
through?
Did you want me to fast forward?
No, we're fine. We'll just pick it up from here.
Yeah. He's going to climb the hell out of
Duke
that
rocking the
curtain.
headband. Yeah, here we go.
Commander, a message. Wait! This cannot be permitted.
I love that they're playing with these Atari controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I also love that they've got all the sophisticated technology, and yet this guy shows up with a note.
Piece of paper. So old school, analog.
The sport can wait. We must have a strategy meeting.
I think it was Philip from Yo-Joe that noticed last night that the Cobra officers here are wearing the red logo sigils.
Oh, right. And then was it the next series, or when they get into the regular episodes?
I think the regular episodes it switches. Yeah.
It will cause you agonizing pain, but you will be free to run.
It's amazing to me how much detail people retain on these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think again because they're some of our earliest, like sounds and sights and the memories, like the sparkly kind of special effect that they give whenever chop. Whenever the headband activates, like that sound is completely ingrained in my memory as just a nostalgic kind of young kid,
Oh, me too. Me too.
Keep laughing, jerk. This is my ticket out of here.
So I had a friend who was at a convention several years ago and was sitting next to Michael Bell. And she was nice enough to call me and put me on the phone with Michael Bell. And it was surreal to hear him talk to me. I mean, I know, and I've met the actress who played the Baroness as well, and it was the same kind of surreal experience.
Yeah.
Okay, Polar Battle Bear, one of my favorite toys, and Snow Job, was also one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
The
Oh
best
my God.
accessories.
Oh my God.
The
Yeah,
best
yeah.
accessories for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And it may be that I lived in Colorado for a while, and I lived in a place where it snowed literally like 6 to 9 months out of the year. But I loved snow troopers. I loved any kind of I loved the snow cat, and I loved the what was the Cobra wolf.
Yeah.
And
1987.
snow serpents. I love snow serpents. So yeah.
My favorite single issue of Origins, by the way, was written by a guy named Merrill Hagen, and it was a snow job issue.
Yeah, no, he's one of my favorites to draw. I think I get asked that a lot. You know, who's your favorite character to draw?
Yeah.
For me, it's always been Snow Job is my first choice, just because everything about him is so very specific to his, speciality. It's obviously all very Arctic, but he has so much gear, and I love throwing a ton of gear on him.
Yep.
And then I would say probably second to that would just be Roadblock because of his size, because just getting to draw somebody with a different proportion. And then thirdly, Snake Eyes, just because you can draw him literally doing anything, and he looks
Yeah.
And shout out to the music in this show. They reused the same tracks, but when that track comes out, it's just you just start jamming with it. Love
Is
it,
that
man.
not the? But is that not the same music that they used in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends?
It could be. I bet my friend Ben will tell me in the comments. Ben, let me know.
Yeah, I'd be
Also,
curious.
shout
I
out to
certainly
Ron
get the
Rudat.
similarity. Yeah.
Shout out to
Yeah.
Ron Rudat, the figure designer of all these figures we love, has joined us, and he's
very
hanging out
cool.
watching cartoons
Ron,
with us.
good.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, is he really?
Yep.
That's cool. Ron, thank you
Okay,
for my
everybody, on
childhood.
3, everybody stare at Ron Rudat. It's nice to meet you,
We
sir.
can see you, Ron. Not to be
I
creepy.
think that's wonderful. That's fantastic. I love it.
Too late.
Ron, would it kill you to put some pants on?
I know.
Oh, they can see
What's
me?
the point of social distancing if you can't not wear pants?
Take note of the hats and coats in these scenes. I love the different people watching Cobra and what they think the rest of the world looks like.
To order your entire military command to lay down its arms. You have 10 seconds to comply.
It's not a lot of time.
Nope.
It is a little unreasonable, to be fair.
10 seconds.
Your nation will pay for your
Now that I'm getting to do some of this kind of stuff professionally, I pay a lot more attention to the background characters and the drones and the other scenes. There was just some really great work in these shows. Just gorgeous designs.
Yeah.
I love that sound so much. God, I love that sound so
It
much.
almost looks like they don't have heads in that shot.
It did look like they were chopped off. Were they wearing flat hats or something?
Yeah, they were.
How about that
They had,
Cobra
no
Commander with the
necks.
lighting behind him, though? He looks like
Oh, that's
Brandon
pretty
over
cool.
there.
I know, right?
You have 10 seconds to bring me a martini.
Your 10 seconds are over.
Was rather good, wasn't it?
Okay, so Ben got back to us. That was not the Spider-Man and Amazing Friends crossover. The disco theme is evidently reused between the two shows.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good to know.
Doesn't know that. Now come, it's time to return to our sport.
I must replenish the pods.
That can wait. First, I'll dispose
Comments are fun.
of Duke.
I wonder if
Yeah,
that was a mistake just then, because his mouth didn't move with the soundtrack.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
It is the
Those
only
eyebrows.
error we will find, I'm sure.
Nope, everything else perfect.
But what's
Spot
weird
on.
is that was the exact same shot, and it didn't move there.
Yeah.
Is this the
Oh,
only
this
time?
is my dude. This is Tripwire.
Is this the only
Tripwire.
time we'll see Tripwire? Was he featured otherwise?
Not
Not
in the
much.
miniseries. And certainly not in the show.
Brandon
yeah.
Jerwa gave him a lot of love in the comics.
Yeah, he did.
Can we talk about Tripwire's file name? Tormod Skoog.
Sure.
Tormod Skoog.
But there's a story behind that.
I have no further comment about it, but that's what it is.
Well, if your last name is Skoog, you think you would go with something a bit more regular, like Jack or Brian. But they just
No,
went all
Tormod.
in with the Tormod.
See, now I know what to look for when I check into a hotel if Brandon's there. Ask if Tormod Screwed is there. You can't escape me now, Brandon.
The robots have to reprogram to deal with our new
Well, let's all remember he said that. It's on video. Tom, weren't you waxing nostalgic about the snake armor last night?
Oh, absolutely. I still love them.
The system neutralizer armored cloaking equipment?
Wow.
There you go.
Which is not what it does.
Where does he get these acronyms? So a little bit of trivia. Ron Rudat is also the designer of the snake armor. So thanks again, Ron.
Oh, really?
Super cool.
Thanks again, Ron.
Founder of our feast, as it were.
It's just a brilliant design.
Yeah. Didn't it say something about brainwashing on the back of the box? I think Cobra could put captured people inside it and brainwash them.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I used to put, I think Larry wrote something along those lines in I think around issue 15 of G.I.Joe, where Dr. Venom, if I remember his name correctly, had mind wiped Snake Eyes or was using some sort of mind control device on Snake Eyes. So I just used my snake.
Nice.
That sounded bad.
Just put him in your snake.
So Cobra Commander has a joystick, and he's playing the big guy like he's an Atari. I don't think that existed as a thing before that. Like,
not how that
I don't
works.
remember seeing anyone controlling anyone with a joystick before.
So Atari was out before this came out.
Yeah.
So these guys know this cartoon. Let's see. Trappier said Tripwire got love in The Revenge of Cobra when they went into the jungle temple. So there you go.
I do remember that one.
Yep.
Is that the same one where Toll Booth shows up with the bridge layer?
So
that's starting to sound familiar. Yeah.
I've seen some great Duke cosplays, but I've never seen somebody do that with the headband.
Oh, they should totally do that. Right? That's a great idea.
Just every now and then he's got to break down.
Like you hand him a stick of gum and he wraps it and takes the paper it was in, like the foil, and sticks it up under there, and he's okay.
You get somebody else cosplaying as Cobra Commander and give him an Atari controller, and he's just walking behind him, like, moving him around.
I love it. That's a brilliant idea. All right, I'm going to try not to move my cursor as much. I got a lot of lecturing last night about moving my cursor.
Yeah, you did. They're like, that dang arrow.
That fibbity fodget. Fidgety fobbit. Some drinking.
Yeah, Tom wanted to fire you over it, honestly, and I thought that was weird. Since you're a volunteer.
So when she comes up and whacks that Cobra soldier in the head, I was like, that guy's dead, but then they cut back to it and you see his arm barely move. So I was like, you can tell, like, they had to tell the animators, make sure you move his arm so kids don't think that he was murdered.
So years ago, actually, I'll wait till the next commercial break and I'll tell a story about that kind of thing.
Something to remember.
It's my sincere hope that Duke takes off in this glider, and just like the toy, it doesn't fly.
Or it crashes and breaks.
Head first.
Just right into a lamp. Bam.
He's like, wee!
So, I mean, at least do a loop-de-loop crash into the ground.
Cobra Commander is like waiting to go into the fight. When is the last time that happened? Like, he's usually the hide in the back guy.
And he had a long rifle instead of his pistol. He was like charging. Well, his rifle's gone now.
He gave it to somebody else.
Take my rifle. So he always talked with the S.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, we found out he was a descendant of Cobra La, and there was a snake connection. Love it or hate it? How'd you guys feel about it?
Dude. Spoilers.
We're not going to make it to 87.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
I think
2022. We'll get there.
Listen, I think we'll at least get to the movie.
Yeah.
All right.
We could probably do the movie series and then maybe take a look at the movie too. All right, Tom. So what's up with the violence in 80s cartoons?
Oh, so when I was a student at SCAD, the comics art program was just starting up. And so they managed to get Doug Wildey of Johnny Quest fame. And the professor there at the time was a guy named Bob Pendarvis. And Bob had, he'd wrangled Doug Wildey into coming in to talk to the students. And it was a big event. They had like the Rowans who run SCAD were there. They had the local news station out there. They had gotten students from like area high schools. Like it was an event. And so Mr. Wildy gets up to the microphone and he starts talking about his time in animation. And Bob is kind of acting as the host, and he's asking him questions about different shows that he'd worked on. And I guess at one point they had done a Planet of the Apes show. And that set Doug Wildey off. And he proceeded to talk about the goddamn standards and practices. And, those stupid sons of bitches. We couldn't do a damn thing. And, the goddamn standards and practices. They rolled these, we had to roll cannons out, and nobody could use guns, and there was sticks and spears. There was, the goddamn standards and practices. It was hilarious. And we found out later that the Rowans, the people who ran SCAD, were horrified. And so anyway, that was where I learned about the goddamn standards and practices, and about what they couldn't do in 80s cartoons. Actually, I have a friend who works in animation, Merrill Hagan, I mentioned him earlier, who can tell you a lot more about the legalities of what they can and can't do in modern cartoons as well.
True. Yeah. We even ran into a little bit of that doing the comics when I was working at Devil's Due. What I didn't know before that is how, Hasbro is built with a licensing committee that can approve, what is on brand or not. And what I didn't realize is that will change as the committee changes. I just kind of figured, there's somebody who's been there since 1980 who has been saying yes or no for the last 30 years. And I was like, oh wait, yeah, that's naive. And I realized that, when new people come in, they bring their ideas of what works and what doesn't. And so when we were at Devil's Due, I remember I had to revise a panel because I think somebody in the foreground, the Cobra soldier had a gun just at ease, kind of off to the side, but there was somebody sitting in the background, and it just lined up that the gun, just by happenstance was kind of in line with that person. I had to go in and revise that and change it because it was quote unquote like pointing at somebody. I was like, I can't have a gun point at somebody. They're like, no, we can't do that. I was like,
I had
what? And then, just real quick. And then when it got swapped to IDW, like literally we had characters getting shot in the head, like execution style. And that was fine. I was like, I think somebody might have changed, like the committee changed.
Yeah.
I think it might have depended on the day, because I had two covers that were kicked back to me. I had one where Flint had Zartan down on the ground with a gun to the back of his head and his boot on his neck. And Zartan his face was bloody and was bleeding from his mouth. So it was clear that he had the crap beaten out of him. And there was like a pool of blood under his mouth laying on the ground. And so that was all in the sketch. And it went all the way to finish. And then it got kicked back to me. I had to take all the blood out. And then later I did a cover with, it was Duke, and the storyline was something along the lines that there was some sort of terror attack using a virus. So in the original sketch and in the original solicited version of the cover, it had Duke holding a baby, and they were both covered in sores. They're both clearly very sick.
Right.
So it got kicked back to me after it had gone out for solicitation, that I had to take some of the sores. I'd take all the sores off the baby and make Duke look less sick. So I did that, turned it back in, then it got kicked back to, I had to take all the sores off of Duke and off the baby, and then I turned that one in. Then it got kicked back a third time. I had to completely take I had to completely take the baby out and replace it with a canister, and still like a virus kind of thing on the side of the canister, and make Duke look less sick. So my storyline was that in the between solicitation and when the book came out, the baby died and was now in the canister.
Oh no!
Wow. Okay.
That was
I took a turn there.
Yeah. Wow. So I've got one too, and I've told this a lot, so people in the audience have probably heard it. I did a story where I put General Hawk in a wheelchair. And I asked, Devil's Due if I could do it. And they said, yeah, we got to talk to Hasbro. We're probably going to have to talk to Hasbro a lot, which made sense. So I got on the phone with Hasbro, and they were super cool. They were very, very supportive of the decision. They were like, we think this is really a good opportunity for some storytelling and character growth, and we like where you're coming from. There's just a couple of things we need to go over. And a person actually said this to me. You can't change his code name to like Wheels or anything.
Oh, no.
And I did that thing where you wait to see if they laugh, and they did not laugh. And finally I said, I promise there's no risk of that. And they're like, okay, cool.
That was
and
like,
you can't like
one stipulation.
Yeah. And they were like, you can't like deck out his wheelchair with rocket launchers or anything. I was like, again, no worries, no fears. And like due diligence, right? You got to do that when you're protecting your property.
That's
true. But yeah, it was a real like. I left that meeting thinking, well, it's great that I'm getting to do this, but did they think I was going to name him Wheels? Like, or was that just a real blanket sort of statement? Like, is that what they thought of me? Like, yeah, we can't let him do this without some sensitivity training. So it ended up fine for everybody but Hawk. Yeah. So that's my story. There were things along the way I think that we couldn't do, but yeah. Nothing more hilarious than that.
So I can contribute one kind of relevant story to that. Kirk Bazigian was the brand manager from 1981, developing 82, all the way up to 86 when they moved him to start the mail order division. When he moved off in 86, they gave the licensing approval stuff to somebody else. So the whole time he had been letting all these covers go where there was heavy weaponry on the covers. Right. And then he comes back, I think 3 years later in 89, and he's talking with the guys at Marvel, and they're like, yeah, these guys that replaced you weren't letting us put guns on the cover. He's like, no guns on the cover. It's G.I. Joe. You're crazy. So Kirk was always an advocate for let's beef up the military part of it. So
yeah, that was just a revelation to me. I probably should have thought, but I never really thought that deep into it until I realized, like, oh yeah, there could be different people in charge, and they have a different opinion of what G.I. Joe is. And when they're the decision makers, that's the brand.
Yeah. It's all about the target demographic. What audience are you going for, right? And is the comic geared towards younger people, or is it geared towards teenagers, or is it geared towards 40-year-olds that can't let it go? And so once you've determined your market, you can determine how you're going to sell to them. So
Well, that being said, one of the things I loved about the comic as a kid was I never felt like Larry was writing down to me.
Oh yeah.
And I remember loving the fact that I would read that book and it made me feel smarter.
Yep.
And occasionally he would include like a little, he would include like a little appendix in the back to explain like long range patrol, things like that.
LRRP. Yep,
exactly. And so, as you're reading this book, he was like quietly educating us, but it was wrapped in this great, wonderful ice cream of G.I. Joe that we didn't notice we were learning things.
Yep. I think I even learned to pronounce it LRP. Long Range Recon Patrol. It was amazing. He just always put those acronyms in there for us, but he also taught us fake geography. So
yeah, exactly.
Some fake countries and
All right.
Wait, are you suggesting I should cancel my vacation in Sierra Gordo?
Yes, you don't want to go there. All right, now back to G.I. Joe.
Flights are pretty cheap right now, Brandon.
It's true. Take a cruise while you're at it.
Oh,
I'll bring my canister.
And now back to G.I. Joe.
Oh man.
God, music to my ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when you had to run full sprint back from the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. You heard the noise, and you're like, you're slapping together your peanut butter and jelly real quick, and you're like, oh crap! You're like running.
That's awesome.
I mean, listen, more than a few times, I remember peeing with the door open just because.
Like this, listening to the show.
Yeah. Well, it was out of fear that you were going to miss something.
And
something to keep an eye on for future episodes of this show.
I love how How do you think they?
Number, real quick, the sheer number of firefights they have in the show, in the miniseries, is pretty awesome.
Yep.
Like just big, full-on battles.
I wonder how they made the decision that everybody was going to get Snow Job's rifle. That XLR1 rifle.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Fail-safe device. It's unleashed
For the
a
animators,
radioactive
whoever did the character designs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was sci-fi looking enough, you know, I guess.
It's like Tripwire didn't have a rifle, right? So they just gave him an XLR1.
Also, can we talk about the fact that Flash's job, his job, guys, is laser rifle trooper, and so far in this episode, he's had a pistol and a flamethrower, while everyone else gets a laser gun.
I was wondering where his laser blaster was. Oh, Snake Eyes making the ultimate sacrifice here, right?
Why is he pointing the gun at Scarlet's head?
Nothing we can do for him. We
I
can't
got
get
past
crystals either.
licensing.
Yeah.
Hey! Look at there!
A way out. It must have opened automatically when Snake Eyes lowered the shield.
Come on!
We'll never forget you or what you've done, Snake Eyes.
It's nice to see Flash and Tripwire together. I used them in my very first G.I. Joe story that got published
Cool.
in Frontline.
That's a vertical.
You guys are going to have to go back and read these comments, man. I can't read every one of them to you.
Things like, see you guys. Doo-doo-doo-doo. I love the sound effect of them flying by.
Yeah. Another widely used sound effect. Oh!
See, now every time I hear this music, I think of Word Burglar.
Oh yeah,
At this point in the chase, they couldn't man a rattler or two, or even a
I love that he just happens to land in this. This is a cool animation though, as he peels out. This
Look
is what
how
he does
big
as hazard.
those Hiss tanks are, though. Those Hiss tanks are
enormous.
huge.
Here we go. This. Carson, you gotta pause this when he ramps up the rock.
Oh, a water moccasin.
Oh yeah.
Little Princess Mononoke there. Yeah, boy!
Listen,
Those Duke boys are in trouble, boys. Oh, Duke. Come on.
Those Tiger King guys are like, they're in the woods behind a tree in this somewhere. I just know it.
Yeah.
Not this time, Joe.
So we were talking about the new Hasbro toy line. The Hiss tank is the one thing I'm really hoping they make. Like, I'm hoping they do some vehicles, and I would love a 6-inch figure scale Hiss tank.
Yep.
Yeah,
I want a
think
flight
if we
pod and a
could-
devilfish.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for a vamp, a ram, and a his tank. If nothing else.
I want a jetpack.
Ooh, oh my gosh, yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be something that they could easily accomplish, you would think.
You know, if you think about it, one of the things that, just as a toy line, I'm kind of surprised they never made is they never made a wearable jetpack.
Vital signs are weak, cover girl. But
You know, they made those Ghostbusters proton packs not too many years later. It would have been easy enough to do like a blow mold jetpack.
Yeah.
There was the closest thing that I think we got was a licensed Firefly backpack that you could open up and it had a toolkit inside.
Ooh, that's pretty cool.
But it's for like a little
Wait,
kid.
what?
Like, yeah, there's a licensed Firefly backpack that looks like Firefly's backpack, and you can open it up and it's got like tools inside because he's a saboteur that would go in and turn bolts and wrenches and put explosives in, whatever. It's pretty
I'm
awesome.
going to go to eBay right now, excuse me.
It's hard to find. I'll shoot you a link to it though.
Yeah, please. I've never heard of that. Never, ever.
My supremacy!
It's nice to know that politicians haven't gotten more attractive in the decades since.
Right?
That poor lady who looked like Sylvester Stallone.
What? Stalker. How did I get
Duke's in a coma.
You could tell us. You were with Cobra. And if you know how to get to Cobra headquarters, we could put an end to this nightmare.
We put you into this hospital bed and you got captured by it.
It's kind of funny. As often as Duke gets hurt, it's kind of surprising that Diana Davis didn't become a nurse. You know?
You know, that's there's something there.
Yeah.
School teachers every bit as noble, though.
If you can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, given the obsession, you would think she... It's only
Oh,
weird
that
to get
laugh.
inside of his
I
mouth.
think we should actually go through this whole thing and keep mentioning Diana Davis and never explain who she is.
Yeah, exactly.
So it'll send people scouring the internet.
I mean, seriously, anybody who's logged in and watching this knows who Diana Davis is.
Yeah, she's and if you haven't seen her Gallery of Duke page, check that out, man. She commissions tons of artists to draw Duke. Duke's her favorite character,
Yeah.
and she's got an
So-
amazing collection.
I live in Seattle now, but for the past year and a half, I was living in LA, and I got to spend time with Diana and her husband Cullen, and they're great
Nice.
people. But when you go in their house, the first thing you see is a full-size
Life-size
Duke
Duke.
uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she has a dummy with a uniform on, and it's very, very cool. But it's not a thing you see every day.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's just showing what your priorities are, which
Yep.
is great.
Yes.
Hey,
Also, the mannequin is taller than me, and I take that kind of personally.
this is in the back of the
So-
room back there, but that is almost life-size right there.
So, Robert, let me ask you something. When you draw the characters, do you cast actors in your head as different characters to help you keep them on model? Because I know with Duke, I have, it's for me, I'm drawing Paul Newman. Like if I could pull, I'm
That's
serious,
good.
if I could pull any actor
Oh.
out of time and space,
Mhm.
Paul Newman is Duke.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. No, I haven't. And to be honest, like I've never there's maybe only one or two times that I've drawn Duke that I feel like I did all right with it. There's a few characters just in general like that I think have a very specific look, and Baroness is one of them too, where
Yep.
you can't just do a generic face and then
No.
you know throw a wig on him or a mustache on him and for it to read as that character. I did. There was a while where I was drawing Stalker, and he was looking a lot like Carl Weathers. So that was like that was happening.
That works.
But
that works.
I don't
That's
I don't
legit.
strictly do it on purpose.
Yeah.
There was a dial tone that I drew for a while that was looking a lot like Mike Norton. If you know Mike, yeah.
That's a big dial tone.
Yeah, it was an enormous dial tone. But I remember I drew him in that panel, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just drew Mike Norton. Picture of it and sent it to him. He's like, why am I in a G.I. Joe comic? So
Why not?
I was like, sure.
Oh, let me ask you
just-
guys a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead. This is an art question.
Sure. Go ahead.
Tim Seeley, hi Tim. I'm sure you're not watching. If I remember correctly, and maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to remember him telling me when we started G.I. Joe together, he said, please, for the love of God, don't make me ever draw a horse. And I was just wondering, is there anything you can't draw or hate drawing?
So as far as like can't draw, I think you know if you study it enough, you know you push yourself through. Especially if it's in a book, you make way to make it happen. But as far as like not liking to draw it, like everybody's got their thing they hate drawing, and for me, it's actually crowd scenes. And because the one word that I absolutely hate, it's like the bane of my career, that a writer will put in a script is the word dozens. Because that means minimum 24 to 36 minimum, right? Objects, ninjas, horses, whatever. And it's like, if you said hundreds, I could get away with little, you know, like head and shoulder shapes and do a big nondescript crowd, right? A bunch of Russians without heads, you know, with these little square hats. That's hundreds. That's easy to draw. If you do like half a dozen, you know, you can draw them large enough or you get into cool details. But as soon as you're drawing 24 of an object, it's large enough you have to detail it, but it takes forever. It takes hours and hours and hours to draw it. And it took you 2 seconds to write the word dozens.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry, that's my soapbox.
I'll take that note for future writing.
I actually like crowd scenes, if only because it's a fun place to play in the background of a scene.
For sure.
Because if you can give the people in the background something to do, and I'm not the guy who invented this. Like I learned this from Cully Hamner. Really, is the guy who kind of put me onto this. And you can play out whole little scenes in the background of a page that other people might not even know are happening. And like in my job, when I get to draw backgrounds of people doing things, that's fun for me. That's one of my favorite things to get to do, because in a job where sometimes you don't get to be terribly creative, because you're serving a different master, that's kind of the place where, as an artist, you get to really play.
Yeah.
As long as it's not distracting from the main story. Like that's the balance you have to find. But as far as things I don't like to draw, people playing guitar. The drawing a guitar is the hardest fucking thing, because like it's such a weird shape, and then getting the fretboard to not look like it's bending. God, what a nightmare. So that Eddie Van Halen book with Brandon is just never going to happen.
No. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. We had such hopes for that Eddie Van Halen book.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up for tonight, everybody.
Was
I'm
that
glad
the end
Brandon
of the
was
show?
able to join us.
Wait,
yep,
was that the end of the show?
Yep.
Well, no.
Carson, can you confirm?
No, it's not. I thought that was it.
You gotta watch the little wrap up at the end, because there's some great animation. We can't just skip these things.
Sorry, my bad.
Plus, it's a teaser.
I want one of those.
Yeah. Look at
It's
radioactive
the best
Snake Eyes. This is what you guys have to look forward to tomorrow night. Okay, 8:30. Tune in.
I smell tube worms.
Yeah.
And listen, if you want to get here for Robert's recap, start at 7:30.
And then we'll just watch it and then do it much more efficiently in the actual show.
Shout out to Dan Thompson, who directed all 5 of these episodes. Shout out to our writer, Ron Friedman.
Oh, thank you.
All 5 episodes.
Oh, you meant the writer. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, the guy that actually wrote this stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
One more shout out, sincerely, to the doctors, the nurses, the hospital workers, first responders, everyone who is putting themselves in harm's way right now. God, thank you so much. We admire you. We're in awe of your courage, and I hope that doesn't sound flip. I mean that genuinely and from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't do what you do, and thank God you're out there.
I think we managed to kind of stay away from the coronavirus talk tonight, but this is certainly hopefully a welcome distraction for everybody that's watching.
Yeah.
It's crazy times right now. So thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully this is a little escape from that constant drip of terrible news out there.
All right, so the plan is we'll be here again tomorrow night, and I think for the next couple episodes, we're hoping to have a few extra guests with us, so be sure to tune in, 8:30 Eastern Time. We'll be here again for G.I.Joe Debriefed. Thanks, everybody.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe. Brandon dips every time.
I know, he's like, I'm out.
Bye, bitches.
Yep. He just bolts.
I ain't got no time for this shit. I'm out. I might put this excerpt on YouTube just so he sees it. Bye, Brandon.
I know, geez. Enough of you guys.
That's what we're gonna call this, the Brandon Bolt.
Okay. Brandon Bolt strikes again.
Tomorrow night. Yo, Joe, everybody, get ready for the Brandon Bolt. Boom.
And scene.
Yeah, exactly.
He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe! G.I. Joe is there.